Thank you for listening to the Matt's Movie Reviews podcast, available on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, and Stitcher. Also, please follow Matt's Movie Reviews on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Reddit, Instagram, Twitter, and Rumble. And of course, be sure to visit mattsmoviereviews.net for the latest reviews, top 10 lists, and more. Now, on to the show.
Is this wrong?
No. Do you want some?
Good evening. To our top story tonight, the McGowan Coppolas family drama continues. Martin McGowan is no longer a suspect in his wife Elizabeth's disappearance.
So, I got a job.
Congratulations, darling.
Thought you wanted to be on TV.
We finally get to write the big expose.
You mean new guy here?
This is my story.
Wrongo, this is a public story, and whoever writes a better piece, they'll be published.
3 o'clock in the morning, Elizabeth, where have you been?
I'm going to bed.
Walk away from here. You've no right to walk. You walk away from here, Elizabeth.
Or we can write something that actually helps someone for once.
You could just come out and say you think you did it.
Knowing him, he'd sue me for defamation.
Which is it? Play her or help her?
We help her by gaining her trust, and then we get the unfiltered truth. Come on!
What's on the tape?
Nothing.
No, not nothing.
Can I see it?
No. This is a victimless crime.
He was a poison. The only way to kick a nasty habit is to form a new one. Lucky for you, the beast abides.
So who gets the credit when this is over?
Hello and welcome to the Matt's Movie Reviews podcast. I am your host, Matthew Pejkovic, and this is episode number 546. Set to have its first screening on July 26 as part of Australian-wide tour is Slant, a black comedy that tells the story of an unhinged journalist who is given the assignment of a lifetime involving the disappearance of an infamous socialite. A blend of high camp soap opera and engrossing murder mystery, Slant also features a cast that includes Sigrid Thornton and Nikou, who I'm glad to say joins me now on the podcast. Michael and Sigrid, I thank you so very much for joining me.
Thanks for having me. And Michael.
Yes, thank you.
And before we go on, for everyone out there, you can go to www.slant-movie.com. There you can find all the tickets and the places where Slant's going to be appearing, and there's going to be plenty of Q&A screenings as well. So it's I really recommend people do go and watch Slant because it really is an incredibly entertaining movie. And Michael, there's a line in the film that I think really kind of brings the whole film together for me, where your character says, "Everyone loves a dysfunctional family drama." And I think it's very true in a lot of ways. I think it's a type of stories that really speak to a lot of people. Because let's face it, everyone's families are messed up in one way or another, right? But in regards to yourself, you started writing this screenplay, I think, like 3 or so years before you guys started shooting in 2020, 2021. What was it at that time for you that you really wanted to not only start writing, but write about this? What is about these characters in this type of family in particular that really spoke to you as a storyteller at that time?
Well, the film is very semi-autobiographical. I've never looked into a murder mystery, so to speak, but it definitely was sort of an exercise in how I might explore how I felt about myself and my family. But I was very aware that I didn't want it to be too self-indulgent. So finding that sweet spot between, how do I put all of myself into it and all of my feelings and all my truth and all that raw good stuff that hopefully should be relatable because it's just that it's true. But then, tell it through the lens of something that's incredibly entertaining, I hope. So that's why it's got all these elements, this high camp and stuff to it, so that hopefully it'll not just be relatable, but also be a thrill ride for people.
So, Sigrid, you played a role of Vivian in the movie. She's the matriarch of the film, an incredibly interesting performance, an incredibly interesting lady. When you first get this script, written by Michael, who's known more for as an actor, and it's got a first-time director attached to it. What were your first response to the script and the character of Vivian? Because I'm very interested as to what the stories spoke to you as an actor.
Well, first of all, you go, oh, Michael Nikou, who's that? I haven't heard of Michael Nikou. And then you do a little bit of like this. And then, but you might do a little bit of research, but really the first thing is to read the material. And as soon as I read it, I thought, this is really unusual. And it's actually extremely hard to write something that's that unusual these days. A lot of things have been done, and some would argue there are only 7 stories and all of that stuff. Putting that to one side, the film has a really particular, it presents a particular world. And the character of Vivian was so wild that I thought, I just really want to meet the team and take it the next step. And as soon as we met, it just seemed to sort of go like, we knew that it was kind of a different kind of a marriage that we'd entered into. And it's been a great ride ever since.
Michael, the film is set in the 90s, 1999 to be specific here. What is it about that decade, that year, that really resonated to you to set that movie then? Because you could have potentially done like the decade before, the decade after, but what was about that time, especially in Melbourne, in Australia at that time, that really kind of spoke to you, that you thought that the story would flourish better in that time period?
There's quite a few reasons actually that I landed on 1999, and I was even so specific that I was tossing up between 97 and 99, and I had reasons. But the general reason I said it in the late 90s is one, I grew up in the 90s, and so there's a nostalgic element for me. So it's personal, and anything personal you can add into your stories will translate, even if it's not obvious, I feel. So that was one part of it. Another part of it is that, when writing a, murder mystery, technology complicates things. I didn't want people having smartphones, and that was, just a mechanical choice. And then stylistically, it's such for me at least, a really visually appealing time. So for costume and design choices, it was just sort of delicious. And then lastly, I'd say that that era was sort of like, I guess there was a transitional point for print media as sort of Y2K and technology was coming along. So there was just all those things. It just felt like the obvious choice that it was going to be set then.
Can I just add to that and say, Matthew, that I always felt like 1999 is such an emblematic year. It was a kind of brink of, we're on the brink of. And the film has that quality about it too, that it might explode into something else any time, and indeed it does. So I just feel like 1999 has a certain, it always did and always will have a certain sort of extra sizzle about it. And so that was another thing that I grabbed onto as an actor.
Yeah, totally. And it's 99. It's like really is right at the precipice.
That's right.
It definitely is, yeah. And Sigrid, I want to ask, just in regards to that year and that decade, the media industry is something that is part of the movie here. And from what I remember of 99, that was the year that I graduated high school. And I remember at that time still, even though the internet was not that far away, the newspaper was everything. The magazine was everything. Print media was essentially like still the big thing at the time. When it came to comparing the media landscape of the 1990s compared to today, for example, do you think things have gotten better in the way that journalists approach their stories? Because there's all these stories we hear now about behaviours of journalists back in that time, whether it be here in Australia and the UK, in regards to all different types of unethical kind of ways to get to the story, like how Michael's character does in this movie. Do you think that things have gotten better since then, or do you think it's still the same kind of tricks that people pull, but just the technology has changed?
How much time have you got? I mean, that's a really, really complex question. And it's a very good question. It is truly pertinent to the film, because the film has deliberately, as Michael said earlier, set itself in an era where print and print was king or queen, or otherwise. Something in between, and mobile phones didn't exist, all that sort of stuff, or we weren't using them readily. Yes, the unscrupulous behaviour of the journalist in Slant is something that existed in during the print media, phase. If we like, to me, it's even weird to call it a phase that we're moving away from, because at the time, of course, no one would have believed if you'd told them that in such a short space of time, most people would read their newspaper digitally, even. That said, I think that that what you're talking about is a sort of the kind of ethics of journalism, and I don't personally believe that that's changed at all. And indeed, I think that journalism. The fact that we have a sort of much more globalized world, if you like, means that people who seek out access to really intelligent editorial commentary on any given thing can find it. But mainstream journalism has unfortunately had to kind of work its way around the explosion of social media. So mainstream journalism, to my mind, has become much more about immediate gratification and less about editorial and ideas. That's where I sit. I could go on forever.
Just on that note, Michael, if Derek was around now in 2023, and would he still be looking to want to be a journalist, or could you see him trying to be something as an influencer or something like that? Would that be something, the road that he reckon he would go down, as opposed to trying to work in the print journalism industry?
Yeah, it's interesting. At the beginning of Slant, Kate Lister's character says to Derek, "Why do I have an ex-radio presenter from 101.9 in my office?" And I think that part of Derek's journey is perhaps not necessarily that he has a passion for news, but there is a hole in his heart he's trying to fill, and that's the avenue he's taking right now. So, yeah, if he was around in 2023, would he also, that's not to say that he doesn't become passionate about the story at hand, at the focus of Slant as time goes on, or as the plot progresses. But it's an interesting point. Yeah, would he be a podcaster? Would he be an influencer, a YouTuber? Because he, at the beginning of the film, he really wants to be on television, and that's something that Billy says as well. I thought you wanted to be on TV, because at least that's how his family maybe sees him. Why do you want to be in print? I thought you wanted to be in front of the camera. So I think there's perhaps a level of insecurity and narcissism at play there with that character.
The Matt's Movie Reviews podcast is brought to you by TeePublic. TeePublic is the world's largest marketplace for independent creators to sell their work on the highest quality merchandise. With over 1.2 million designs, TeePublic is sure to have something you'll love. The Matt's Movie Reviews podcast is brought to you by Amazon. The world's leading online store, Amazon is your first stop to buy a wide range of products at competitive prices with fast delivery times. Amazon is also a world-class entertainment hub that includes Prime Video, Audible, Twitch, Amazon Music, and more. Sign up with Amazon today and experience the best in online shopping and entertainment. Please support Matt's Movie Reviews on Patreon. Get access to exclusive content, request movie reviews and top 10 lists, and help support my work. Please click on the Patreon link in the description below. Sigrid, when it comes to Vivian, when you get a script, how do you like to approach your characters? Do you like to write background for your characters? Is that something that you do? Because she's a very, as people will know when they watch the movie, she is a very complicated character. There was a marriage that was once there. It's no longer there anymore. There are a lot of things happening with her relationship, with her children, things that are alluded to, things that are not. Do you like to approach characters like that by putting together your own thoughts and such in a diary or such? Or do you like to talk directly to the screenwriter, to the director, and bring out your thought process in regards to that character in that way?
A bit of both, Matthew. I don't have a private, I haven't seen fit, certainly not in this case. I didn't have anything that was sort of private. And I know that some actors like to experiment with having a few secrets up their sleeve that are just for them to use to empower the performance. But I didn't, certainly not in the case of Slant, I didn't have any kind of secrets when I was making up my when I was developing a sense of who the character was. I do, generally speaking, yes, have an understanding of a backstory, but a lot of my so there's a kind of, most actors would say this, but for me, there's a sort of intellectual process that has to go on that so that I can get those kinds of ducks in a row. But that's all to the end of, in the end, letting that intellectualization go, just to kind of free the mind and the body to forget about the processing that happened before and allow whatever's going to happen. And in fact, James is very much that kind of a director. Very much, he works with pure instinct, pure sort of functional bodily instinct, and that makes. I'm not meaning to sound too esoteric, but it has a sort of a basis in an intellectual basis in fact, or in the facts that we've created as the foundations of the house, if you like. Does that make any sense?
Absolutely, yes. And Michael, when it came to your character, Derek, costume look is a big part of the film because of the period setting and in the times. But Derek, especially, really does have a look to him that's really specific, really flash, which is kind of funny in one instance because on one hand he's a reporter trying to almost go undercover and try to get to the truth, but he's like the person you'll first see in the room just by what he's wearing, his jackets and everything else. When it came to the approach of the look of this character, of Derek, the hair, the highlights, the costumes, the jacket specifically, I think jacket specifically is something about his character that really stands out, because I think at one moment he was wearing a jacket and I think it was Kate's character says that jacket looks stupid, and you didn't like hearing that whatsoever. What is about the costumes for you that really kind of brought out who Derek is as a person, you think?
The costume it was very important to me. I worked closely with the costume designer, Madeline McCarthy, who's just an incredible talent. She has such an eye. And a lot of the clothes that are in the film, some of them are from my mother's wardrobe. Every time she'd do a cull for years, I would sort of stop her and go, wait. And so many things that are in the film by various characters are straight from my mother's wardrobe, and I would source things from op shops. And I think that to go back to more the focus of your question, because I digress a little, this character is really trying to assert himself in the workforce, assert himself in his family. That, as you said, Vivian at the beginning of the film says, that jacket looks ridiculous on you because that jacket belongs to his father. So definitely every choice at the beginning of the film, he's wearing a newspaper printed jacket as he watches the news. So look, the film does exist in a highly stylized place. So that is something that carries through to every character throughout the film. I mean, every character is wearing things that are almost more theatrical than they are cinematic. And that was a very much a deliberate choice. But in terms of Derek's clothing, I think that he's, it's interesting that you bring that up, that, he's meant to be this undercover reporter, but he sort of is definitely no shrinking violet. He's wearing leather pants, leather on leather on leather, or whatever he's doing. And I think that that's tied to his sort of, his sort of Joker side, where he has a flair for theatricality in everything that he does. Even the way that he goes undercover, he's not going undercover in a way that's inconspicuous. He's going undercover in this way of like inserting himself into these people's lives and pretending to be their friend. He's playing a role. So it makes sense and made sense for us that he would costume himself. He costumes himself for any given environment.
Sigrid, I'm curious in regards to hitting a specific tone to a performance. When you have a film like Slant, and it's intentionally meant to have that high theatrical element to it. I mean, that's really one of the whole points of the movie. And when you have a character like Vivian, who is going through this transition in her life, and she wants to be an actress, and she really wants to kind of reinvent herself. But she does it in kind of like really larger than life way. How do you like to approach trying to get that tone right? Is it something that you find in the script, or is it something that you talk about with the director to try to get that to that high point, but not so far up the point you kind of like almost kind of like a kind of over time to jump, for example, instead of landing you kind of crash and burn? Because I'd like to know about trying to get that right tone when it comes to dealing with material like this.
Well, I'm glad you put the question in that way, Matthew, because it comes with a presumption that I did get the tone right and I didn't jump too far over the cliff.
Well, I think you did, absolutely. I know, Michael, I think you think so as well, right? So,
she had to seem extreme, and I did say to James on many occasions, you can always pull a person back. And it's true with directorial work that a director can always pull an actor back. It's much easier, well, in my view, to pull an actor's performance back a little bit, and in other words, make it slightly less overplayed, than the other way around, than to try to get the actor who's seriously underplaying to give you more. So, and in this character, with Vivian, she's so overt that I had to simply throw myself in. So the answer to the question is, it's on the page, and it's to do with the relationship that we formed together as a company. Me individually with James, but also, of course, with Michael, because this was a film that was. There was a tremendous amount of openness to collaboration. And so we really did feel, I think, very, as free as possible to discuss each other's stuff with each other. And it can be difficult on a set to make commentary about another person's work or another person's situation on the set. We didn't have those kinds of restrictions on the Slant set. So I had a lot of help from Michael with things like this. Because Michael, I think at the same time as James, encouraged me to kind of go all the way, really, and which I did. But look, where to pull back is one enters into a situation of trust with the director, so that the director will say, "Hang on, just take a look at this and see where it sits in relation to the scene we just shot, etc." But you also have to it's a combination of experience and throwing caution to the wind, really. That's the case with me and Vivian, because I knew that Vivian could fall flat on her face if she went too far. So I don't know whether I've answered your question.
It sounds great to me.
Yeah.
Michael, I just wanted to ask as well about, this movie for you. You had to learn new skill sets, right? Of course, you're a great actor, but you have to learn. You're delving into writing with the movie, producing as well. It's one thing to get a concept of film going. It's another thing to try to get it all together and get the financing and everything else. And especially for an independent film. And I think, having spoken to a lot of independent filmmakers and producers, the number one key thing when it comes to getting this film together is that everyone is on the same page, right? You as a producer, you want to make sure everyone's on the same page. And Sigrid has talked about several times now about how important collaboration was and how it all came together. And it seems to me that while on the screen, we're dealing with a family that is broken and dysfunctional and not communicating, behind the scenes, a new family is being formed, right? And I think a lot of times when it comes to independent films especially, it's like a family effort. Everyone's got their roles and they all come together, to the point where even your own mum was doing catering in the movie, right? So what was it like for you to delve into these uncharted waters as a producer? And I'm sure how blessed it would feel to not only have a great cast, we have Sigrid and Pia and Ella and so many other people, but you were all coming together in a really kind of just organic, really just way of open collaboration and creativity to get this film made and get it on the screen. I'm sure for you, there's a high level of satisfaction that comes with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we were beyond blessed that there was not one single bad seed and not one ego. Everybody, very early on in the process, I say this a lot because I just love it. Sigrid said, we were in the middle of a rehearsal and Sigrid said, best idea wins, in relation to something we were talking about. And that was sort of became our team motto for the entire Slant family going forward. It was just, we want to make the best piece of art we can possibly make. So there's no time to, take into account whether everything was always approached delicately. I mean, Sigrid even suggested a shot at one point that we hadn't storyboarded. And then in post-production, we were just thanking our lucky stars that Sigrid had, come up to us and said, hey, I think you should do this. I think it's really important. And there was, a multitude of examples all throughout the process where nobody ever stepped on anyone's toes or stepped outside of their own department. Everyone was very respectful, but the tone was set very early on that this was collaborative. Everyone was equal. And if you had something useful or you wanted to add in because you thought it was going to make the film better, that was going to be received in a healthy and open way. And that's the only way I ever want to work, at least. I think it made the process for an indie film with barely any money and where everyone has to get savvy. If you don't have that attitude, then we wouldn't have made the film we made.
And Sigrid, I'm sure that being a part of a cast and crew like that, to see that great collaboration and need and great communication and creativity come from that would have been really satisfactory for you as well, as a person who, you've been on many movie sets, you've been on many types of films, and to see a film like this with young creatives come together and everyone working on the same page would have been a real kind of satisfying experience as well.
It was a deep thrill. It was because I not only saw, and experienced the spirit of collaboration, which, as you suggest, doesn't always happen. And in fact, more often than not, there is a kind of a much more considered hierarchical situation where, which is there for a reason, and people are asked to respect that, etc. But this was different. And but the other thing that I wanted to stress was that the other really satisfying thing as the filmmaking unfolded was to see that that the team had the core team, Michael, Monica, James, and the other producers who were less evident on set, I should say. Those core people had populated the film with a really, really solid group of talented young people, so that it was a collaborative set, yes, and it did have all of these advantages of there not being didn't have to tread around and tiptoe around egos, etc. But that said, there was an enormously professional approach day to day by everybody, and everybody individually was incredibly well skilled for their work. Favors were called in, but there were no shortcuts taken with the skill sets.
So for everyone out there listening, Slant, starting July 26th at the Ritz Randwick, we'll start having a nationwide tour. You can go to slant-movie.com and find the session times there. I'm just looking here. I mean, this is going everywhere. Sydney, Adelaide, Perth, Darwin, throughout all types of regional Victoria, Melbourne. It's going to be very busy times for yourself, Michael, and Sigrid going forward, and it's going to be. I think it's going to be great for people to watch this in the cinema, because this is the type of film I think that people need to react to in a cinema experience. I think there's going to be a lot of laugh. There's going to be a lot of there's shocking moments. There's twists. There's really great kind of whip pan kind of editing throughout the film as well, and the costumes and everything. It's a really vibrant kind of engaging black comedy. And I want to congratulate you both on the movie. Michael, especially yourself, for putting this all together. It's your vision that you see on the screen. I'm sure watching the reactions that you've gone so far for the movie has been really terrific for you. So I thank you both, Michael and Sigrid, for your time today, and best of luck with the upcoming tour. I think a lot of people are really going to enjoy this film.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thanks. Pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you for watching the Matt's Movie Reviews channel. Please subscribe for more reviews, podcast interviews, and exclusive content. Also, if you would like to request a review and support my work, please join my Patreon via the link in the description below.